Prabhuji, let's please get started, please. Yes.
It's okay to get started now?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
please.
I'll let you say whatever introductions
Yes,
you
yes,
normally
Prabhuji.
do, and then I'll
Okay.
begin. I'm just greeting people while we're waiting.
Okay, all right, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, thank you all so much for joining. This is actually a meeting of 3 groups, actually. I think there are more devotees expected to join us. Thank you all so much for joining. We welcome all the devotees from Houston as well for this very special Sangha. Today we have with us His Grace Brahma Tirtha Prabhuji. Very brief introduction about Prabhuji. Prabhuji met the devotees when he was in Peace Corps science teacher in Bihar, India in 1971-72 time. He had gone to India to study Bhagavad Gita and to find out if Hare Krishna was a bona fide sampradaya or not. And then he had the good fortune of meeting Srila Prabhupada at the first Mayapur festival. Prabhuji says that Srila Prabhupada changed his life by convincing him that good association is the key to spiritual life. And thank you all so much for joining us and giving us this association. Prabhuji got initiated in Houston in 1976, so that makes you guys very, very special. Currently, Prabhuji is the director of Bhaktivedanta Institute of Higher Studies. That's how I got connected to Prabhuji. And he's also co-director of ISKCON Resolve and on the board of directors of Bhakti Center, New York. And he's also a certified court mediator as well as a licensed professional geologist. Prabhuji, thank you so much for joining us. The way I introduced you to our group was through this book, Perfect Questions and Perfect Answers. My daughter looked at you and she's asking me this question: why doesn't Prabhuji look like this?
It's called Changing Body Exhibit.
Prabhuji, please lead. We are very, very fortunate to have you here. Please. Thank you, Prabhuji.
How old is your daughter? I ask everyone who's here to, if you don't mind, now some of you, I know it's not practical because you're doing other things or you're still in your pajamas from this morning, whatever reason. But if it's practical, I ask you to turn on your video so we could see each other. And even just for a moment, then feel free to turn it off. And then I see who I know. I see my dear friend and associate Leela here. Thanks for joining, Leela. She just finished giving a class in Africa. Okay, so I just asked, because sometimes I like seeing who I'm talking to, and but I realize some of you are still in your pajamas from this morning, so that's okay. So tonight, instead of Rajendanandana, Aribol, there you are. We need to talk also, so we'll do that. Old friend. So I thought I would do a different format tonight. Friday night, everyone's a little tired. It's been a long week. We had a lunar eclipse last night, and a full moon now. So people who are experiencing lunacy are experiencing extra doses of it. And it is crazy times. Everyone knows that. So what I thought I would do is change up the format a little bit. And we would make tonight 1 hour. We'll end promptly about around 9. So 5 after 9, I think. So what we'll do is we'll do questions and answers. And I will try to answer your questions the best I can. Sometimes I don't know, maybe the best I could do, or I have to look into it. But I thought tonight we would make it a general question and answer time. I know our host had a few questions to prime the pump, as we say. And if I ever speak too fast, just tell me to slow down. And if I speak too slow, I don't know what I can do about that one. Okay, so let us begin with some questions. And then as you have questions, you can raise your hand. You can put it in the chat. I have a chat window open. And questions, comments, and disagreements are particularly appreciated. So let us begin. So I'm going to begin though with the invocation. You say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I offer my respectful obeisances to all the assembled devotees and pray that I have their blessings to be steady in service to Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Okay, so let us begin. Ramana, did you want to begin with questions?
Sure, Prabhuji. I can get started.
Yeah, we primed the pump a little.
All right. I have one question from my side and one question from one of our group. First question is, if there is one instruction that you'd like to remember from Srila Prabhupada, what would that be?
That is a very good question. So I will have to tell a story to put the answer in context. So hold on to your seats for the story. At the very first Mayapur festival, there was 60 or 70 devotees, and there was the only building at Mayapur was Prabhupada's Bhajan Kutir, and there was nothing else there. So those who have been to Mayapur have seen the Bhajan Kutir. I think I have a picture of it somewheres, but here it is. There's a picture of the Bhajan Kutir. We'll show you. And this was the only building in Mayapur. That Bhajan Kutir is a thatched hut at Mayapur, and we had a men's tent and a women's tent. At the very first Mayapur festival was 1972. Now, it was impossible to buy land in India, especially in Bengal, which was run by a communist government, an elected communist government, and they weren't very favorable. Somehow or other, the devotees were able, led by Tamal Krishna Maharaj, to buy land right walking distance from the birthplace, the Yogi Pit of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Prabhupada said, as soon as they got the land, which was early 1972, let's have a Gaur Pranim festival there. And devotees said, we can't do that. There's nothing there. It's rice paddies. Prabhupada said, we will have a festival. So Chutananda built that little hut, and they put up a men's tent and a women's tent. And right in 1971, in December, something very dramatic happened in India. Can somebody tell me what happened? Everybody in India knew about it. It was quite a dramatic event. Can somebody tell me what happened?
Was it war with Pakistan?
Yes, a war between India and Pakistan. And East Pakistan then got freedom from West Pakistan and became Bangladesh. And there were a lot of refugees leaving Bangladesh. And Mayapur is just over the border from Bangladesh. And so there were thousands of refugees. So Prabhupada said, we will feed all the refugees. Now, I had heard, I used to visit Calcutta. I was teaching in Bihar, but I'd visit Calcutta, and I ran into some devotees, and they said, we're doing a food relief program. Well, that interested me greatly. So I said, I'll come up and help. I didn't know who Lord Chaitanya was. I knew about the Krishna movement. I'd read the Gita several times in college, not Prabhupada's, it wasn't yet published. And I saw the devotees chanting in 68 in New York City, and I liked it. So I started chanting. But I didn't know what it was, and I didn't understand the philosophy. And there were many weird gurus coming to America in the 60s. Many really strange dudes, as we say nowadays. And so I thought if I go to India, I can figure out who's who. So I had run into devotees in Calcutta, and I was fascinated by their philosophy. I was a little astounded by the lifestyle. And so then I said, I'll go to Mayapur, help feed the devotees, help feed the refugees. And there were these 60 devotees there, mostly from the West. And there was one English-speaking guest at the first Mayapur festival. One. That was me. The only other guests were villagers. Now, at a typical Gaur Purnima, there might be, outside of COVID times, 1 million guests coming. But here there was one guest. And I got to see Prabhupada, and he kept me in that hut with him all day. Why? My guess is to protect me from 60 devotees who were very anxious to preach, and mostly all under 25 years old, and one person to proselytize to. Now, some of the devotees like Yadabara and Vishaka and Giriraj, then Brahmachari, were just wonderful. Some of them were wonderful in their own way, but not any way I could even begin to relate to. So Prabhupada kept me with him. And then devotees were giving me all kinds of advice. You know, when I wasn't in the Bhajan Kutir with Prabhupada, they're giving me advice. You should do this, you must chant, you must offer your food, you must rise early, you must dance at Arti, you must do this, you must do that. And there was a lot of should, big piles of should all around me. And it was very bewildering. So after the Gaur Purnima festival, I was in Calcutta again, and I saw Prabhupada. And I said, Prabhupada, there's so many instructions I've been given. I'm just trying to slowly understand all of this. And Prabhupada said, what's most important? So he told me. Now that's your question you're asking, what's most important? So, and this one instruction takes account all the other instructions. So he gave me one instruction. So now we will have a contest to see who can guess what it is. I wish I got to think of a prize to give, but we'll figure that out later. But who can guess what the one instruction, should I chant 16 rounds? Should I follow the principles? Should I rise early? Should I offer my food? Should I read the books? Should I wear neck beads? Should I surrender everything? Should I surrender nothing? What is the most important instruction? So who can guess? And it encompasses everything. Anybody? You can raise your hand or put in the chat. Who can guess what the instruction was? Yes, tell me. Go on. Nalim, your hand is raised. Tell me what it is.
Follow Prabhupada's instruction.
Yes, but I'm asking what that instruction would be. In this case, he gave a specific instruction. That's good what you said. That's true, but he gave a very specific one. Vrajabhumi.
Just chant?
That was there, but he gave me a broader instruction that would allow me to chant. But that, you're right, chanting was there, but not number one. Ooh, I'm challenging you.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, what was number one instruction? Any other guesses? There's no wrong answers. I mean, all of you are saying correct answers, but number one, aha, somebody took a guess in the chat and you got it right. Our host got it right. He said, always associate with the devotees. And he said, if I associate with devotees, everything else, you'll be chanting, you'll be following, you'll be rising early, if you like it or not, you'll be doing everything. But good association, he said, was number one. So my whole devotional career of a half a century now, I make the number one principle to have good association. Now, what does good association mean? This is discussed by Rupa Goswami in the Upadeshamrita, the Nectar of Instruction. You reveal your mind in confidence and you listen in confidence. You give and receive gifts. You give and receive prasadam. But the main thing is you reveal, let's say you take one, you reveal your mind in confidence. To who? To people you trust. So I associate intimately with people I trust. So some devotees, for example, I honor at a great distance. Some I honor as close to them as I can get. And I want to be respectful to everyone. I mean, I want to be respectful to the ant and the elephant and the dog. And according to what Krishna says in the Gita, even the dog eater, it's called Sama Darshana, equal vision for everyone. But having respect for everyone is not the same as associating. So who do I associate with? For example, I go to Houston, I will make it a point to hang out with Sarvabhauma and Guru Bhakti because I value their association. When I'm with it, I feel that my Krishna consciousness is enriched. So who I intimately associate with is very important. Now, it used to be to associate, you have to physically be somewhere. COVID, for all the curse COVID has been, it's a huge blessing because now we can associate virtually. We can see each other. We can almost touch each other. And, you know, so we always have association. With the advent of Zoom, there is no reason we have people here from New Jersey, India, Colorado, Houston, and like that. Of course, of all the places I mentioned, which is the most glorious? It's obviously New Jersey because that's where I was born, but that's another story. Okay. So I think I've answered the first question. What's the second one?
What is your fondest memory with Srila Prabhupada?
Oh. Every memory with Prabhupada was fond, though one of them stood out as particularly poignant for me. There's so many. It's hard to take the most, but when I got back from India, I was a little unusual. In those days, when you started chanting 16 rounds, within 6 months, you were surely initiated. So I came back from India chanting 16 rounds, following the principles, reading the books, but I was also engaged before I went to India. And my poor fiance, she knew nothing about Krishna, never heard of it. And when we went to New York, when I got back, we just went to New York to go visit. And when she saw the devotees, she was like, wow, these are really weird people. And then to make it more weird, I walked up to them. I said, hello. And I said, I just met your guru, and they'd heard about it. That was before the internet, but things traveled quickly, I guess. I don't know how. And they started hugging me. And she was thinking, oh, these weird people, he knows them. But she was very, very pious and very deeply, deeply spiritual. So if Krishna consciousness, I thought, is natural, as Prabhupada had said to me, then surely she will take to it. But I didn't want to push. One thing I learned, you never, never preach to your spouse. Bad idea. You discuss philosophy, you exchange thoughts, you reveal your mind in confidence, but you don't, as we like to say, preach. Bad idea. So I knew instinctively not to do that. So since I had been so immersed, I said, let me wait for her to get a taste for it, which she did. And when she met Prabhupada, she got a huge taste for it. And gradually she became, and still is, one of the most amazing, committed, and deepest devotees I've met. You know, her name is Bhakti. So she's an incredible devotee, but I was no rush to get initiated. Prabhupada took 10 years, you know, so I took 4 years. I took a little time. And so after a few years, I'm back from India. Even though I'm in graduate school, I'm running a Krishna yoga club. I'm doing all kinds of service. I'm very engaged. And some devotees were thinking, you're not initiated yet. What's wrong with you? They said, what's wrong with you? And I said, I'm going to unplug my phone. Okay, now I've unplugged it, so we can avoid that. And they said, what's wrong with you? And not all devotees, just a few. There were some devotees that were really wonderful, but wouldn't speak to me like that. Some were trying to make me, what's wrong with you? You should have been initiated by now. You go give up your wife, give up this, give up that, and just surrender. And so I started, after a while, it got to me. And I got somewhat depressed about it. And I was thinking, just like you read in the Bhagavatam, Vedavyas got depressed. And Narada Muni came and said, what's wrong? Well, what's wrong with you? Did you insult a Brahmin? He says, did you not protect a woman? What did you do? You're so depressed. And Vedavyas saying, no, I didn't do that. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Finally, Narada Muni says to him, verily, what you have done is you have written karma kanda and you have not given people the essence. And therefore you're depressed. Same thing, Arjuna was depressed. So there's stories like this. So I'm not comparing myself to these great saints, but I was feeling kind of depressed like that. Maybe I'm doing something wrong with me. So I was thinking like that. So then Prabhupada was at the old Henry Street Temple, 439 Henry Street, and he was going to walk from his quarter to temple room. So I said, I'm not going to let Prabhupada see me. I don't want him to see my face. I'm too whatever, fallen or, just anyway, I was thinking like that. So I went and offered, some of you have heard this story before, so I apologize for that. But it's the answer to the question. And so I went and offered obeisances in the corner of the hallway so Prabhupada couldn't see me. And I offered obeisances before he rounded the corner because the sannyasis around first. So as soon as I saw the first danda, I, as we say, hit the dirt, said the prayers very slow. And by the time I'm done, Prabhupada will be sitting on the Vyasa-san, and I'll just sit in the temple room doorway because it's very crowded. I didn't know it. Prabhupada stopped. He saw me, even though my head was face down in the corner, and he stood next to me. I had no idea about this, no idea whatsoever. And I'm saying the prayer as slow as one could say it. Nama, Om, Vishnu, like that. And when I stood up, Prabhupada was 6 inches from me, to my shock. And he turns to me and he says, so glad to see you, and gave me a huge hug. And Prabhupada wasn't a big hugger. So at that moment, I knew that the course I was taking in my heart, I felt it was the right course. And some less mature devotees, the mature ones said nothing, but less mature ones had kind of told me otherwise. And so then I knew it was the right thing, but there was so much affection in that moment from Prabhupada. And how he knew this, I don't know, but he knew it, and he knew where my heart was. They say the face is a mirror of the mind, but Prabhupada couldn't even see my face. All he could see was my rear end. I mean, that's not the mirror of my mind, I hope. So it was like, how did he know this? And he just somehow knew it. And when I stood up, he gave me this huge hug and he said, "So glad to see you." And I knew everything was right. So that's one of several several times when Prabhupada just gave me Prabhupada was, as I like to say, use the term of Ram Baru, a radical personalist. I love this term. Should be the motto for ISKCON. We are radical personalists. We want to just be as personal as we can be. And Prabhupada that's who he was, extremely personal. And we see it, like, for example, I'm on the board of the Bhakti Center in New York. And I'm on there because Radhanath Swami asked me to. And he's such a personalist. Whoever he meets, that person feels that the only one in the room is me, and he's talking only to me because he's a personalist. So that was Prabhupada. I'll open for more questions. I hope I'm answering these questions okay.
Wonderful, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, very, very beautiful. Any other questions?
Any others? Anybody have any? Let me tell you the topics that sometimes people ask me about. Why do I think Jersey is the most wonderful state? Other questions are about the Bhaktivedanta Institute, all the things that we do. I was one of the original members of the Institute, so I go way back. I'm also co-director of ISKCON Resolve. We do the conflict resolution. In fact, my conflict resolution training, I attended the first class that was offered on this in ISKCON. That was in 2002 in Towako, New Jersey, September. And that class was organized by Braja Bihari, and that class was brilliant. Okay, I see one hand up, Braja Bhumi.
Okay, let me continue with the theme of devotee association. And maybe you can give advice, or maybe you can, I'm an introvert, and I will give a million excuses as to why I cannot come over for if I'm invited to have prasadam somewhere. And I'm very discriminatory or picky with association just because I'm an introvert. What advice would you give to someone like me when devotee association is important? And I associate with my home and through lectures like this, but I'm just my comfort zone. I'm very much of an introvert.
Okay.
I don't.
Braja Bhumi, that's a very extremely important question. There are no introverts or extroverts. There are people who are mostly introverts and people who are mostly extroverts. That's my experience. People see me as an extrovert, but I have a strong introvert side too, where I just need my own space. So I find most people, it's a spectrum. So you're mostly in the introvert side. That's sometimes very good for devotional service, by the way, because by being introverted, introverts tend to be better candidates for deeper meditation. They're have a more at peace with themselves. So being an introvert can be a big advantage for you. But what does association mean? For an introvert, association often will mean one-on-one association, not so much a group setting. Some people get intimidated in a group setting. Everyone has to chat and talk, and it creates a certain level of discomfort. So for you, your association might be more one-on-one association, and might even be 1-on-0, meaning you and a good book. And that's perfectly fine. Just because other people can be social butterflies, and you get butterflies in your stomach when you get too social. So we have all kinds of butterflies. So you can be a social butterfly, but if you get butterflies in your stomach, then feel very free to just do what works for you. There's no judgment here at all, that if people are inviting you over prasadam and there's too many people and you don't do well with the people, there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you may, it may be your austerity sometimes to just tolerate, just like somebody else's austerity may be to tolerate to be alone. They're not used to that. But one man's food's another man's poison. It's the same. Does that help you, Brajabhumi? Yeah. We honestly need more introverts in the movement. Sarva Boma, my dear friend.
Brahma Tirtha Prabhu, cooperation is said to be an important thing to Srila Prabhupada in Krishna consciousness. But, you know, there's a lot of rugged individualists who have very different natures and ideas. So you work sometimes in helping devotees resolve differences. And can you comment on how we can have the attitude of trying to cooperate, even though it's sometimes difficult?
Well, Sarvabhauma, the question you asked, when I have open question time, that question invariably comes up, because you asked a very important question. One time, two devotees were arguing, and Prabhupada, one devotee went to see Prabhupada. Prabhupada, I can never work with so-and-so Das. And then Prabhupada turned to him and said, and that is your austerity to work with him. So sometimes we have to, even if it can be a little bit austere. The very first time I met Prabhupada, I'll tell you that story. I usually don't tell this story. 1971, before I was in Mayapur, I took the overnight train to Calcutta from where I was in Bihar. And I actually went to Calcutta to get a milkshake. Even though I only earned a few hundred rupees a month, a train was 1 rupee if I went third class, and they had an old British milkshake shop there. And that helped with homesickness. So, and I ran into the devotees, and then I went to the temple, and I walked into the room, and Prabhupada was in his room. They said, would you like to hear Prabhupada or see him? So I walked in the room. This was around October, November 71. And there were 2 devotees in the back of the room arguing. And I was very bewildered. Here is the devotees tell me, the Jagat Guru, the master of the universe, and 2 devotees are in the back of the room arguing. Why would they be arguing when they can just ask the Guru? You may wonder that. And I just watched, and Prabhupada just ignored it. He asked if I had any questions. I asked my first really, it was such a really dumb question. I can share that with you too if you want. But it was on the scale of 1 to 10 being dumb. This was like an 11. So, and later on, I found out what was going on. One of the devotees was about to senior fellow, because in 1971, if you've been in movement 3 years, you were very senior. And he was a Swami, and he was having spiritual trouble, and eventually he would leave. And he was arguing with another devotee. And I realized what happened, what Prabhupada did. It was very clever. If Prabhupada had interfered and told this devotee, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, then the devotee would have committed 2 offenses. The first offense a devotee was committing, one of the devotees arguing, was he wasn't following very well. But then if Prabhupada gave him an order, he would have 2 offenses. 1, not following, and 2, disobeying the orders of the spiritual master. So Prabhupada stayed out of it, I later learned, to avoid the devotee committing a double offense. So, to follow up on your question, when devotees don't get along, sometimes good fences make good neighbors. Devotees, just can't work together. That happens. That in Bombay, I just finished reading Giriraj Swami's I'll Build You a Temple, wonderful story about the history of Juhu. And there were some devotees who couldn't get along well. And sometimes Prabhupada would have them stay, and sometimes he'd say, okay, one of you go here, one of you go there. So we have to use practical intelligence to deal with these things. A devotee is supposed to be a lion on the chase, meaning when we're out preaching, we can be really strong when we're out doing outreach. And when we're home, we should be a lamb. With each other, we should be very gentle and kind to each other. And that's the standard Prabhupada wanted for us. Because we're not always mature, it doesn't always work. So when devotees go together, the first thing is we try to have mutual understanding. Second thing is we try to be humble. Prabhupada often gave the example of the Aesop fable. Prabhupada liked certain Aesop fables. And one was the bundle of sticks. And the short version is, the father wanted the sons to work together. So he gave the example of a bundle of sticks. If you have one stick like this, anybody can break it. If you have a bundle of sticks, it's a big enough bundle, nobody can break it. So if we work together cooperatively, nobody can break it. But if people can't work together, then better they engage in devotional service separately. Prabhupada said something very interesting. Now, if Prabhupada said something 5 or 10 times, you would think that's important, I imagine. What if he said it over 150 times? What kind of importance would we give that? 150 times, at least, I counted. And what did he say 150 times? He said, you should always make sure you send the speaker some donuts. No, that's not what he said. But that is also true. What he said was 150 times that Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. So somebody is more advanced, somebody's less, somebody's struggling, somebody's making progress. So the key is to be tolerant and humble. One devotee went to Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada, we can't be too humble either. So he goes to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I am the most fallen. And Prabhupada turns to him and goes, you're not the most to anything. So be humble, but not artificially so. Does that answer your question, Sarvabhauma Prabhu?
Yes, I think it does. I think it's a strength of ISKCON. There's so many different devotees that have creative ideas. Just, I think that devotees are able to think more than some other kind of people. I mean, Tamal Krishna Maharaj kind of encourages disciples to learn how to think, or he tried to. And I think when I first met devotees, I found they were very individual. You talked about radical personalism. Devotees were such brilliant individuals. So
Um, and in the mood of radical personalism, we accept some people struggle on one thing, some people struggle on another. We have a certain tolerance. One devotee, senior devotee, made an interesting observation. Several of us were in a room, and he said, if we weren't devotees, we would never be in this room together. We're all so different. Somebody was an athlete, somebody was a thinker. We're all so different. He pointed out how different we were. And we all felt a great bond with each other. We felt a great bond of affection and appreciation. Yet when it was pointed out that if we weren't devotees, there's no way we would have ended up together. We're just too different. But we had that commonality of Krishna at the center, and the differences were so less substantial compared to the commonality. And that after that devotee told me that, it was actually Vaisheshika told me that. One of the most intelligent devotees around. And when Vaisheshika told me that, and I realized if I wasn't a devotee, and Vaish and I are friends and we get along great, and we just love being together. But if I wasn't a devotee, I'd probably, in the material world, never get his association. I'm a short East Coaster. He's a tall West Coaster. We're very different people. Very, very different people. And we love being together and talking to each other, and we serve together in various ways. But if we weren't devotees, I can't imagine how we'd ever be together. So there's something special about the bond of serving Guru and Gauranga. It's very, very special and rare. Thanks for your question, Sarma. That's a very nice question. What else? Anything on your mind? Nalim, tell me what's on your mind.
Sir, I have never used a counter for chanting my japa. I've always used japa beads. But I was asked by someone, is using the counter same thing as using the japa mala? And I wasn't sure.
Okay, I'm glad to answer that question. Prabhupada made it clear in the following the instructions of Rupa Goswami. There are no, I repeat, no hard and fast rules on chanting. So why do we chant on beads? Because if two of your senses are engaged, your mind is captured. So if you're chanting on beads, one sense is hearing, one sense is talking, and one sense is touch. And even with all of that, our mind will still wander. I mean, it happens to me, it happens to probably most of us. But at least with beads, it helps bring our attention and focus. Now, sometimes beads are not the most practical thing to chant on. We're traveling, it just may not be practical. So if it's not practical, you can chant on a clicker. Sometimes devotees get arrested and they take away the beads so they don't, because they don't give you beads or belts or anything you might kill yourself with in jail. So what the devotees chant on, they chant on their hands, they count on their hands, just like we do Gayatri. And so if you can count on your hands, you can count on japa beads, you can count on a clicker, all kinds of things. There's no hard and fast rule except one. The one rule is chant Hare Krishna. So find out what works for you, and what works for you is fine. And if someone else criticizes you, oh, you must be on beads, you must do this way, you must do that way, then that is a kind of person who I would say you associate with at a good distance, a very good distance, respectfully, but at a distance.
may I ask a similar question regarding
Of
things?
course you may.
If you use the counter, uh, is it okay to use the left hand to click it, or it's not good?
Well, I mean, no hard and fast rule. I knew one devotee. He was a now. What would this devotee do? He was captured in the Vietnam War by the North Vietnamese, by the Viet Cong. And at that point, President Nixon had swore that there were no American soldiers in Cambodia. And he was an intelligence officer, like a captain or lieutenant, something like that, captured in Cambodia when Nixon was swearing there were no Americans there. And then he escaped. I think he killed a guard and escaped, and they recaptured him. Very powerful person. And they hung him in the river by his arms and tortured him. And he's so powerful, he escaped again. He told me the story. And when he escaped, he made it to the American lines, going through the jungle, made it to the American lines. And just as he got there, the Viet Cong shot a rocket grenade, and the rocket grenade knocked off his right arm and exploded in front of him and killed all the people in front of him. But all it did was knock off his arm, and he passed out, but the medics saved him and saved his life, and he came back. Now, a wonderful story. And this devotee also had a great influence on the Star Wars movie. He helped the producers. They based a lot, the Force and all, on literature from the East. And he was able to have some influence with them about this. Because then George Lucas and all these people were basically unknowns. George Lucas had done one movie. It's very unknowns. Nobody heard of these people. And he was able to influence them. Very, very wonderful devotee. But I'm describing somebody who's really wonderful, a war hero, a powerful person. He ran ISKCON Communications for years before he had to retire. But he always chanted his japa with his left hand. Can somebody tell me why, in spite of our standard to use our right hand, he only chanted japa with his left hand? Can somebody tell me why?
Because his right arm was damaged or whatever
He
you
didn't
just...
have a right hand. Exactly. He only had a left hand. So now, so generally, because we use our left hand for sanitary purposes and our right hand, it's just, Vedic culture of cleanliness is there, but it's also practical. There's no hard and fast rules on these things. So I generally chant with my right hand, but sometimes circumstances are such, if I have to chant with my left hand, better I chant with my left than not chant. That's okay. So Prabhupada one time commented, we are not the International Society for Rules and Regulations. The regulations are our servants to help us advance in consciousness. But when the rules and regulations become an obstacle, according to Rupa Goswami, then we have to avoid them.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Okay. And if you're ambidextrous, then that's even more interesting. Okay, what other questions do we have? We have time for a few more. Anything that's on your mind? I know you're used to kind of a lecture, but it's Friday. I was too tired for a lecture. And all of you, people tend to be tired on Fridays. I thought we'd kind of engage your mind and know what's on your mind. But anybody have anything else they'd like to ask? Anything you always wanted to know, but were afraid to ask? I won't embarrass you too much. Yes, Naleen. Thank God you're here. At least I'm getting questions.
Well, I sometimes have a difficulty in deciding how to deal with somebody who follows or who asks me instructions, just like this one was, whether she can use the japa or that, or you already answered that. But sometimes there are other questions, very simple one, but I am put on a spot as she puts me, oh, you are my guru, I have to follow you. And I don't know how to deal with that. So give me some strength as to how to keep my mind balanced for that.
So you're saying some people view you as their guru?
Yes.
That's nice. So act like a guru. And what does a guru do? A guru, it means teacher. So you teach them by your good example is number one, always teaching by good example. And then Prabhupada would say that example is more important than precept. We can say anything, but do we actually follow it? I remember my uncle used to smoke all the time, and he would always instruct my cousin, who was my age. I was a boy. He would always instruct my cousin, now don't you ever smoke while he's smoking. It's useless. So you set a good example. And if somebody sees you chanting with the left hand and they ask about it, you say, yes, the important thing is to be able to chant. My right hand is very tired and it hurts, so I'm using my left hand. I just had, you can see in my hand, I just had an operation on my left hand. Now, if I had the operation on my right hand, I wouldn't be able to chant with my right hand. It takes 2 weeks to heal. And so then I'd be chanting with my left hand. It's nobody's business. And if somebody wants to say something, then they come up to me, oh, look at you. Oh, look at you, fallen person chanting with your left hand. And my answer to them is very simply, thank you. And I don't discuss it. Because I'm not seeking, I don't want their association. I have no desire for their association. So what do I do in this case? I just say thank you politely, and it ends it. I'm looking for people to associate who are going to inspire my Krishna consciousness, and I can inspire them to higher consciousness. It's just like if you're a medical doctor. Guru Bhakti is a medical doctor. So when she's learning, she's going to associate with doctors who can teach her. She's not going to associate with doctors who, when she asks questions, belittle her and make her feel like she has no brain or something. You wouldn't associate with those people. You associate with those people who encourage you and teach you and set an example. So just association. But as devotees, we have the vision, sama darshana, equal vision. We see the dog and the dog eater and the Brahmin and the elephant all equally, Krishna says in the Gita. So in doing that, we're respectful. Well, we can be respectful at a distance. Does that answer your question, Naleen?
Yes, but I also feel kind of out of balance in those situations. So I need to gain some strength to accept and be there. So I don't know how to do that either.
The way you get strength is doing what you're doing now. I'll tell you how I get my strength. We all go through ups and downs in Krishna consciousness. Everyone does. And the way I get my strength, like for example, one of my best friends is Ratatvija Swami. So when I get bewildered, there's so many pressures on me, I don't know what to do, I'll call him up and talk to him with it. And when I'm done, I feel a new rebound strength. So when you feel your strength is taken away and being sucked away, one of the things you can do is just find the people who you trust and feel comfortable with and reveal your mind to them. You know, there's a lot of pressure on me. I don't know what to do about all this. And that's the way you deal with this.
Thank you again.
Okay. I mean, I can't give a general rule without I can give a general rule, but specific situations require specific action. Guru Bhakti.
Hare Krishna. I was wondering, how did the perfect question, perfect answers come about? Whether did you keep notes, or was there a recording that you, because you were alone with Srila Prabhupada. So what was the process?
Yeah. I had no idea what was going on. In fact, the very first conversation with Prabhupada was not recorded. I wish it had been, because if you read the book, you'll see it begins like in the middle. It doesn't begin at the beginning. And I have to fix this for the next edition. There's a new edition going to come out for Gaur Purnima's 50th anniversary. And I have a note in front of me to work on that. The book is now in 58 languages. So I need to take this seriously. And after the first conversation, Shama Sundar, who was Prabhupada's secretary, said, this is really interesting. The reason he didn't record the first one, he had an extreme shortage of cassette tapes because Prabhupada was using it for translating. He was recording classes. And in India, it was very hard to buy cassette tapes then. So he was very careful in using it. But when this conversation got so interesting, he hit the button, started recording it. So after the second conversation was recorded, this went on for several days. Prabhupada would call me into the hut multiple times a day and said, let's continue talking. And at the end, Shama Sundar said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, those are perfect answers you gave him. And Prabhupada turned to Shama Sundar and said, yes, and we're going to make this into a book, and we're going to call it Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. And Prabhupada wrote me a letter telling me that. So that's how it came into a book. I had no idea. I thought, I knew Shama Sundar was in the room, and I knew obviously Prabhupada was there because I was just sitting on the floor next to him. I only looked at his feet though, except exactly when he was talking to me. Instinctively, somehow I did that. It says in the Gita, just approach a spiritual master, inquire submissively, and render service. And the self-realized soul can give you the truth. Now, I was rendering service because I was doing food relief. Every time I wasn't with Prabhupada, I was thousands of refugees. I was serving them khichdi. I was doing guard duty sometimes, whatever they asked me to do, I was fine. I inquired submissively because I didn't know if Prabhupada was the so-called Jagat Guru or not, but I really admired him. So I said, I'm not going to challenge him. I'm going to try to learn from him. And later on, I can try to digest it. So I accidentally hit the formula. I rendered service. I inquired submissively. And Prabhupada gave me the truth. So I was in the room with him. Later on, I discovered there were a lot of devotees in the room sometimes because devotees heard Prabhupada speaking. It's real interesting. I mean, word gets around quick when, you know, there's what the old saying, telephone, telegraph, tell a devotee. I mean, it was really fast. And all of a sudden, Prabhupada was so mesmerizing to me, his presence. I didn't know it till later. Devotees told me I was there. I said, no, you weren't. It was just me and Prabhupada and Shama Sundar. I said, no, I was there. The whole doorway was full of devotees, but I didn't know it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's do one last question and then we'll be done for the day. Somebody put something in the chat. Ancient India was said to be instrumental in developing number systems with great range for high numbers. Some numbers, cows, soldiers are so high, they seem to defy mundane logic. Can you comment? Oh, Sarva, you've asked a tough one. You all know Yogeshwar, or you might. Yogeshwar is an amazing devotee, a senior fellow on the board of our institute. And his brother is a very famous Brian Greene, one of the most popular scientists on from Columbia University on public television. He does all these specials, the most expensive specials they ever produced on string theory and cosmic theories and all of that. And it's his contention that there must be multiple universes. And we see this in that famous story. He's coming from physics saying it. And we see in the famous story when Lord Brahma went to see Narayan. And when he got there, the gatekeepers asked, so he goes, gatekeeper said, so who are you? He says, who am I? I'm Lord Brahma. I want to see Narayan. They say, oh, wait a minute. So they go inside and they come back and they go, which Brahma? They go, what do you mean, which Brahma? I am Brahma. And they go, which Brahma? I'm four-headed Brahma. And he was like, what are they talking about? So he walks in and then he offers obeisances, and the Lord does his thing, and all these thousands and maybe millions of Brahmas come and appear all at once. And some of them have 4 heads, some have 1 million heads. I can't even imagine this. And it was so strange. And they all came and offered obeisances at once. And then Ryan goes, so how are you? And all the Brahmins say, yeah, everything's fine. So, oh, just checking on the universes, have a good day. And they left. And our Brahma was a little proud, our 4-headed Brahma. So in order to make him a little humble, the Lord went and showed him so many Brahmas from much bigger universes, because the more heads, the bigger the universe. So big and so powerful. So he was trying to make our Brahma a little humble, just like we just did Govardhan Leela, where Krishna tried to make Indra a little humble. Sometimes demigods, they need a little humility here and there. So we can see that there's multiple universes, and time and space are rules that don't necessarily apply. So that doesn't answer your question, Sarva. But what it does say, the answer might not be known yet. We have, sometimes there's just the numbers seem too high for us to wrap our heads around. And there's a few explanations. Sariputta and I, the great late ISKCON, the top ISKCON scientist ever, he and I would discuss these things. And sometimes it's inconceivable potency. Sometimes it's multi-dimensional space in which more things can fit than we can see. Sometimes it could be hyperbole of numbers. Sometimes there is hyperbole. Prabhupada used to use hyperbole, exaggerated numbers at times in his discussions. So I can't give a specific answer, but it's a very interesting question. And our final question, let me see, no hands are raised. The final question from Brajabhumi, any plans to write a follow-up book? Well, I wish you had not asked that question, because now you're going to make me feel guilty. Because people ask me, well, you should write something, but I don't get to it. So to answer your question, yes, there is a plan. And yes, it's something that ought to be done. I'm trying to get the Bhaktivedanta Institute settled first. We recently obtained a new headquarters for the Institute. I'll show you. Here it is right here. And I'm in charge of remodeling this. Used to be the president's house for the University of Florida. And that was recently donated to us, and we're remodeling it. And we've had many libraries donated, including from New Jersey, Adwaita from Rutgers. And now we have 8,000 books, which we're indexing, setting up. So my focus has been on the BI and some ISKCON resolved matters. So yes, I should do it. Brajabhumi, it's your wish that I do it. So I will go ahead and do that because you have ordered me to do so. So now I must do it. Thank you for that. And finally, Sue Devi Sundari asked, what was the embarrassing question you asked Prabhupada? Well, okay. I was hoping nobody would ask. Okay, so I go up to Prabhupada and I say, well, Prabhupada, why? I just come from Bodh Gaya. That's where the Buddha received enlightenment under this tree. It's near Patna, Bihar. And I just visited there and I sat under a sapling, they say, of the original tree. And I sat there and I did not become enlightened. What a bummer. Anyway, so then I was thinking, I studied Buddhism in college. We were all into Buddhism then. And so when I went to ask Prabhupada, I said, well, why not Buddhism? Why Hinduism? So Prabhupada answered the way he typically answered that question. And he turns to me. He didn't want to talk. Prabhupada said to me several times, I don't want to talk about this-ism or that-ism. I want to talk philosophy. So Prabhupada didn't want to talk about Buddhism or Hinduism. We want to talk philosophy. So he asked me right away, what did the Buddha say? So we talked philosophy. Well, what is a philosophical point the Buddha said? And I said, well, he had eightfold path and fourfold noble truth. Or was it fourfold path and eightfold truth? And I was mumbling and stumbling. And finally I turned to him, well, I don't know what he said. I can't remember. And then Prabhupada goes, then why are you asking? So after that, I shut up and I said, I'm going to listen. A fool only reveals himself when he speaks. And so that really helped. So when I met Prabhupada in Mayapur a few months later, I was in a much humbler state of mind. I was determined not to chew my feet twice in front of Prabhupada. Okay, so thanks for asking that, Sudevi. It was a little embarrassing at the time, but Prabhupada laughed too. Prabhupada never made me feel judged, never made me feel I was inferior. When I would ask a stupid question, he'd go, well, why are you asking? But he said it like with a twinkle in his eye and a laugh. And he said it in such a way. At the time, I wasn't embarrassed till later. At that time, he just disarmed me. I thought, yeah, why did I ask that question? That's kind of dumb. That Prabhupada had, he was a radical personalist. He wasn't out to make me feel dumb, but he wasn't going to get sucked into my asking him to be my comparative religion teacher. So that's what happened. Okay, we'll stop here. I've gone on for a full hour. I really appreciate, my friend Ramana, that you let the Houston folks come into the group because they were short a speaker. I hope I didn't bore anybody too much. I try not to. I once gave a class in Gainesville at Krishna House, and one devotee, young man, had been there a few months, and he walks up to me and says, I really loved your class, Brahma. And I said, well, what did you like about it? And he gave me a compliment that I'd never gotten before, and I'll probably never get again this life. It's a very rare, rare compliment. I'll share it with you. And I said, what did you like about the class? And he said, I mean, these words really touched my heart. And he said, I didn't fall asleep once. I never heard anybody else getting that compliment. I was quite happy. So that's my goal of giving a class. Okay. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions about, let's say, Bhaktivedanta Institute, I'll put our in the chat. That's it. If anybody needs to reach me, my email's in the chat. If anybody has questions on conflict resolution, I'll put that in the chat. And it's all right there in the chat, whatever you need. Okay. I thank you all very much. I know you have a kirtan or something else now. I'm going to leave now because my voice is gone, but thank you all. I pray for all your blessings that I may somehow please Prabhupada by my fallible efforts. And I hope you all stay well and healthy in these crazy times. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for joining, Prabhuji. This was our truly our pleasure to have you here. And Prabhuji, can we request you to join again like this a couple of more times? I think we have a lot more questions, Prabhuji, for you.
I'd be very honored to. It's such a nice group and nice people and nice questions and really thoughtful, very, very, very thoughtful people. Many more stories I can share about Prabhupada that I experience. And the main point when I share about Prabhupada, so I want people to understand he was a really nice person. We see him just like we finish the Damodar prayers and we pray in the Damodar prayers. I don't want to know you with all your awe and reverence. I want to know you as the one that Mother Yasoda chastised. We want to know you as a person, not all this awe and reverence. I don't want that. That's what our Damodar Astaka's prayers say. So similarly, I think it's very important. We, of course, have awe and reverence for Prabhupada, but we also, it's important we know him, that just the wonderful person he was. And then our relationship goes much deeper. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Nalini. Thanks for asking so many questions. You kept everything alive tonight. Krishna sent you to this. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. I wish you a good evening.
Thank
and
you.
I'll log off. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you so much,
Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Guru Bhakti Mataji, can you please share your contact? Maybe next time when we host Prabhuji, I can always send a message to you.
Sure, I'll write it in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. Okay, now we have Nrsimha prayers by Abhay and Arjun. If you want to stay back, Srila Prabhupada, thank you so much for joining. Please share your contact as well, and I'll keep you posted. Thank you. Abhay Arjun, you want to do Nrsimha prayers?
Okay. Okay. Namaste.
भगवान की जय। महाराज की जय।
Jai.
हरि हरि बोल।
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Abhay Arjun. Thank you so much. Beautiful listening of prayers. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you all so much for joining. Next time when we get Brahma Tirtha Prabhu again, I'll definitely message Sri Rupa Mataji and thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Hare Hare.